Do you believe in aliens? Well, the people of Cairo say they've lived with one. Every single night during Ramadan, he didn't arrive in a spaceship, he didn't fire lasers, no fancy technology. He simply walked the dark streets, carrying a shimmering drum, and woke the entire city, night after night. They called him Mesaharati. But the elders? They whispered something else. He came from Mars. Picture this. You live in an old neighborhood of Cairo. It's midnight. The city is silent. Only the silver moonlight spills across tangled alleyways, casting shadows like old whispers. Suddenly, a steady drumbeat echoes through the narrow streets. A deep, rhythmic sound knocking softly on each wall as if it's waking not just the people but the very bricks themselves. That's the Mesaharati. Across Cairo, Damascus, Beirut, Morocco, even Jakarta and Istanbul, the Mesaharati is a living symbol during Ramadan. A man who walks the streets each night, drum in hand, singing softly, calling every family to rise for suhoor, the pre-dawn meal before fasting begins. But in Cairo, there's a stranger tale, one the old folks whisper only to the curious on quiet Ramadan nights. Mesaharati wasn't entirely human. He came from Mars. Before we lose ourselves in tales of starlit skies and alien travelers, let's return to Earth, to history. Mesaharati wasn't always a legend. Records trace him back over 1,000 years to the days of the Fatimid Caliphate in Egypt. In those days, people had no alarm clocks, no apps, no reminders flashing at midnight. How did anyone know when it was time to wake for suhoor? Simple. At first, city officials would walk through the streets calling out in the dead of night, banging on drums or knocking doors, shouting, "Wake up, O sleepers! Worship your Lord!" Over time, the job passed to locals, men who knew every alley, every neighbor by name. And not just in Cairo. In Damascus, Syria, the Mesaharati walks with a tambourine, his scarf fluttering behind him, singing beneath the moon. In Beirut, Lebanon, he carries a lantern, lighting up the quiet streets. In Jakarta, Indonesia, children sometimes tag along, banging on pots and pans, joining the night chorus. Even in Istanbul, Turkey, ancient neighborhoods still echo with drum beats during Ramadan. Each place has its own version, its own rhythm, its own Mesaharati. But in Cairo, there's one story you won't hear anywhere else. The story where the Mesaharati comes from Mars. But why Mars? Why did the people of Cairo, of all places, start whispering that their Mesaharati wasn't from this world? Well, legend has it. Long ago, people began sleeping deeper, longer. As Ramadan nights passed, they no longer bothered to wake for suhoor. They slipped into comfort, laziness, forgetting the discipline and reflection that the month was meant to bring. It's said that, under the watchful moon of Ramadan, Earth itself seemed to drift into a haze, a planet lulled into slumber. From above, Allah looked down, concerned. How could he awaken his people from this growing sleep? He needed someone who could walk tirelessly through the night. Someone who never grew weary, never fell into habit, never succumbed to the human tendency to forget. But where do you find such a person? A signal through the cosmos. So the story goes, a signal was sent. Not just to Earth, not just through the skies over Cairo, but far beyond. Past the clouds, past the stars, all the way to a cold red planet. A lonely man on Mars. There on Mars lived a solitary man. He stood atop Olympus Mons, the tallest mountain in the solar system. Night after night, he listened to the sounds of the universe, quiet, endless, without cities or noise, just the whisper of the cosmos. When the signal reached him, he heard it clearly, a plea carried on invisible waves. Come, help awaken humanity. And without hesitation, he answered. A journey across the stars, no spaceship, no technology, just sheer will. He mounted a chariot made of light, the kind of light human eyes can't quite see, and crossed the vast emptiness between Mars and Earth. In his hands he carried a drum, but this wasn't just any drum. It wasn't made of wood or goat skin. It was forged from Martian metal, cold, gleaming, shimmering red under the stars. Touching down in Cairo, he didn't land in fanfare. No explosions, no bright lights. He stepped quietly into the narrow alleyways of Cairo under the same moon as always. From that night on, every Ramadan, he walked the streets, drum in hand, eyes shining faintly like distant stars, calling out each family by name, never missing one. People grew used to him. They called him Mesaharati. Only the children, peeking out from behind doors, would whisper, "He doesn't seem quite human." They say if you paid close attention, you might catch the strange little traces the Martian Mesaharati left behind, scattered like breadcrumbs across the sleeping streets of Cairo. Most people never noticed, but the curious, the insomniacs, the old men watching from their rooftops, the children sneaking peeks past half-open doors, they whispered about certain things. A drum unlike any other. Some claimed they once touched his drum. It wasn't rough like wood. It wasn't soft like leather. Instead, it felt cold and smooth, like polished stone, but somehow lighter, almost humming beneath the fingertips. Under the glow of street lamps or moonlight, it shimmered red, but not the red of earthly metals, more like the glow of a distant planet reflected on a sheet of ice. Artisans in Cairo tried to copy it. They hammered brass, forged copper, blended rare alloys, but no one ever recreated the sound. The deep, rolling beat that seemed to vibrate not just through walls, but through the marrow of your bones. The elders would smile and say, "That drum? You don't hear it with your ears. You hear it with your heart." Eyes like little lanterns. The children who dared stay up late told stories of his eyes. Not his face, no one remembered that clearly, just his eyes. They said they glowed faintly like two tiny lanterns floating in the dark. Not blinding, not human. Eyes reflecting something far beyond the streetlights of Cairo. One old woman, nearly 100 years old, once swore, "When I was a girl, I looked into his eyes, and that night I dreamed of a sky filled with red planets." Not quite right. Mesaharati didn't just drum, he sang. People in Cairo knew his tune by heart. But sometimes in the deepest part of the night, when the streets were dead quiet, a few extra lines would slip into his song. Words no one recognized. Not Arabic. Not any language the scholars knew. Some folks joked, "It's the language of the stars." Others whispered, "It's a tongue no earthborn man can understand." A few curious academics even tried to transcribe his lyrics, matching them against ancient Phoenician, Babylonian, even Latin, but nothing fit. The conclusion? Maybe those lines weren't meant for human ears at all. And then, one day, he vanished. As time passed, cities filled with electric lights, loudspeakers, and digital alarms, people stopped listening for drum beats. And just like that, the Martian Man disappeared. No one knew when he left. No one knew where he went, but every so often an old-timer might lean in close and say, "One day, when the city goes dark, when the power cuts out and there's no glow from your phone screen, if you listen carefully, you might just hear it. Not from down the street, but from somewhere far stranger. Maybe from the stars, maybe from inside yourself." So think about it. Back then, people needed a Mesaharati to wake them up before dawn. No alarms, no apps, no smart devices buzzing at their bedside. And yet they cherished the sound of that drum because it wasn't just calling them to a meal. It was reminding them of something bigger. That there's a time, even in the quiet of the night, set aside for discipline, for reflection, for staying awake, not just physically, but spiritually. But today, fast forward to now, our world is louder than ever. Phones ping nonstop, calendars overflow, notifications light up our screens before we even open our eyes. Who needs a man with a drum anymore? But here's the strange part. We've never been more asleep. Not the kind of sleep you fix with coffee, but the deeper kind. The sleep of routine, of scrolling endlessly, of rushing through days on autopilot, forgetting why we're even here. The symbol of awake living. Maybe that's why the story of the Martian Mesaharati still lingers, because he wasn't human, he didn't tire, he didn't get caught up in distractions, he didn't fall asleep at the wheel of his life. He kept walking, kept drumming, kept calling people back to themselves. That's what made him unforgettable. And maybe he wasn't just there to wake the city. Maybe his story is here to ask, who's waking you up? Are you still listening? Some people say it's the 21st century. Who needs a Mesaharati now? We've got phones, smartwatches, algorithms reminding us what to do. But maybe that's exactly the problem. The Martian man is gone. He no longer walks the alleyways. His drum doesn't echo off stone walls anymore. But that drum beat, it might not have vanished at all. Because the real drum was never outside. It was the rhythm inside each of us. The quiet reminder not to drift, not to sleepwalk through life. And maybe, just maybe, one night when the city lights fail, when the power flickers and your screen finally goes dark, in that silence, you might hear something faint, not from the street, not from the stars, but from somewhere deeper. So what do you think? Has the Mesaharati really disappeared, or is it possible that now you're the one holding the drum? If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to follow. And maybe next Ramadan night, you'll be the first to hear that distant drum beat again.